If a woman stops seeking your approval, it doesn't mean she lost interest. It means she found herself. And the way a man reacts in that moment tells you everything about his confidence, his fears, and whether he was ever ready to meet her as an equal. When a woman stops seeking approval, the first thing that changes is not her behavior on the surface, but the emotional mirror she holds up to the people around her. Approval seeking acts like emotional cushioning. It softens interactions. He reassures others that they are safe, needed, and in control. When that cushion disappears, men are left alone with their internal state. And that is where emotional security or the lack of it reveals itself. Emotionally secure men do not experience a woman's independence as a threat. They experience it as clarity. They notice that her words are fewer but more precise, that her boundaries are calm instead of defensive, that her presence feels grounded rather than performative. They don't rush to fill silences or test limits. They don't feel the urge to dominate the space or withdraw from it. Instead, they adjust naturally, because their sense of worth is not dependent on being constantly affirmed or deferred to. They are comfortable meeting someone who stands on her own emotional footing. In contrast, emotionally insecure men feel the shift immediately, even if they cannot articulate it. The absence of approval seeking removes a familiar signal they relied on: reassurance. Without that signal, uncertainty rushes in. Questions begin forming beneath the surface. Am I still admired? Am I losing influence? Do I matter as much as I thought I did? These questions are uncomfortable, and rather than sit with them, insecurity looks for external resolution. This is why reactions become polarized. Some men lean in harder, seeking validation in subtler ways. They may increase compliments, initiate more conversations, or try to regain emotional access. Others move in the opposite direction, becoming distant, sarcastic, or critical. Both reactions stem from the same place: an internal imbalance exposed by the woman's withdrawal from approval-seeking behavior. Approval-seeking often creates an unspoken power structure. The person seeking approval unconsciously positions the other as evaluator, judge, or authority. When a woman steps out of that role, the structure collapses. Men who are comfortable being placed above, even subtly, now have to meet her on equal ground. For emotionally secure men, equality feels natural. For insecure men, it feels like loss. What's important to understand is that the woman did not take anything away. She did not become cold, dismissive, or superior. She simply stopped over-explaining, over-giving, and over-adjusting. The reaction she receives is not a response to her actions, but a response to the vacuum left behind. In that vacuum, emotional patterns surface. Emotionally insecure men often confuse approval with connection. When approval disappears, they interpret it as rejection, even when none has occurred. This misunderstanding drives testing behaviors. They may provoke emotional responses, challenge boundaries, or subtly disrespect her to see if she will revert to seeking validation. These tests are not conscious manipulations as much as unconscious attempts to restore a familiar dynamic. Emotionally secure men do not test in this way. They don't need to confirm their position through control or reaction. They observe. They respect boundaries without resenting them. They may even feel increased attraction because self-directed confidence signals emotional maturity and self-responsibility. It tells them they are dealing with someone who chooses connection rather than needing it. Another revealing reaction is how men handle her silence. Approval seeking often fills space with explanations, justifications, and emotional labor. When a woman stops doing this, silence enters the interaction. Secure men interpret silence as neutral or thoughtful. Insecure men experience it as judgment. They project meaning onto it, assuming disapproval, criticism, or loss of interest because their internal dialogue is already unstable. This projection often leads to defensive behavior. Tone shifts. Jokes become edged. Conversations feel slightly off balance. The woman may notice that she hasn't changed her values or intentions, yet the dynamic feels heavier. That weight comes from the other person carrying emotions they are unwilling or unable to regulate internally. What makes this shift so powerful is that it is not performative. The woman is not demanding respect or asserting dominance. She's simply no longer negotiating her worth in real time. That alone removes emotional leverage from anyone who relied on her self-doubt to feel secure. Emotionally secure men respond to this with curiosity rather than control. They ask clearer questions. They listen more closely. They don't feel rushed to define or lock down the dynamic. Their sense of self does not depend on being needed, only on being authentic. This is why their presence often feels calming rather than overwhelming. Emotionally insecure men, however, may attempt to reestablish hierarchy. They might emphasize status, success, or authority. They might subtly diminish her confidence by questioning her choices or framing independence as coldness. These behaviors are less about her and more about their need to feel anchored. The key distinction is that emotional security allows men to remain regulated in the presence of autonomy. Insecurity demands reassurance. When reassurance is no longer freely given, insecurity becomes visible. This revelation is not always immediate. Sometimes it unfolds gradually. Small comments, slight changes in effort, subtle shifts in respect. Over time, patterns emerge. The woman begins to see who can relate without control and who cannot relate without validation. What's often misunderstood is that approval-seeking benefits insecure men more than secure ones. It gives them a sense of importance without requiring internal growth. When that dynamic ends, growth becomes unavoidable or the connection deteriorates. This is why a woman stopping approval-seeking doesn't just change how she is perceived, it changes who remains comfortable around her. It filters interactions without confrontation. It exposes emotional maturity without accusation. Men who are emotionally secure don't feel the need to be centered constantly. They don't interpret independence as detachment. They understand that attraction rooted in choice is stronger than attraction rooted in need. For them, the woman's shift feels like integrity, not resistance. Men who are emotionally insecure experience the shift as instability. Without approval as a stabilizer, their internal landscape becomes louder. Their reactions grow more pronounced, more revealing, more difficult to mask. And through this process, the woman gains something invaluable: clarity. Not because she demanded it, but because emotional security cannot hide in the absence of validation. Self-directed confidence changes the foundation of attraction in a way that is quiet but irreversible. Validation-based attraction depends on reassurance, responsiveness, and emotional availability that is constantly being proven. It grows when someone seeks confirmation, approval, or acceptance, because the other person feels needed, important, and central. Respect-based attraction, on the other hand, grows when someone is internally anchored. It does not ask to be chosen, it allows itself to be discovered. When a woman operates from validation-based confidence, much of her energy goes into reading reactions. She notices tone shifts, facial expressions, pauses. She adjusts herself in real time to maintain harmony or interest. Men often interpret this as warmth, openness, or chemistry, but underneath it is effort. The attraction formed here is conditional. It relies on her continued willingness to adapt and reassure. Self-directed confidence removes that condition. The woman is no longer performing emotional maintenance for the interaction. Her sense of worth does not rise or fall based on response. She listens without over-accommodating. She speaks without over-explaining. This creates a subtle tension because the dynamic is no longer fueled by emotional pursuit. For many men, this is unfamiliar territory. Validation-based attraction is comfortable because it provides feedback. It tells them where they stand. It reassures them of influence. When that feedback loop disappears, attraction must reorganize itself around something more stable. Respect. Respect-based attraction is not built on being needed. It is built on being chosen. A self-directed woman does not orbit the interaction. She participates in it. This distinction changes how men experience desire. Instead of feeling affirmed by her attention, they begin to assess her presence. Instead of feeling central, they feel challenged to rise. Men who are emotionally mature respond positively to this shift. They recognize that her confidence is not resistance but coherence. They feel less pressure to perform and more space to be authentic. Attraction becomes grounded rather than reactive. It deepens slowly because it is no longer driven by emotional highs and lows, but by consistency and mutual recognition. Men who are not emotionally mature struggle with this transition. Validation-based attraction allowed them to feel powerful without being accountable. Respect-based attraction asks more of them. It It requires emotional regulation, clarity, and self-awareness. Without these traits, the attraction often collapses or mutates into control, distance, or disengagement. One of the most noticeable changes is how effort is interpreted. In validation-based dynamics, effort from the woman increases attraction because it signals investment. In respect-based dynamics, excessive effort can decrease attraction because it signals imbalance. Self-directed confidence naturally regulates effort. The woman gives what aligns with her values, not what secures attention. This recalibration often surprises men. They may notice that she is no longer rushing to respond, not because she is playing games, but because she is present in her own life. They may feel less emotionally managed and more accountable for their own engagement. This can initially feel like loss, but it is actually a return to equilibrium. Respect-based attraction also changes how conflict is handled. Validation-based attraction avoids tension to preserve approval. Self-directed confidence allows tension without fear. The woman does not collapse into silence or over-explain herself to be understood. She states her perspective and allows the other person to meet it or not. Men who respect themselves find this stabilizing. Men who rely on emotional leverage find it destabilizing. Another shift occurs in how desire is expressed. Validation-based desire is often loud, immediate, and reactive. Respect-based desire is quieter and more deliberate. Men may feel less urgency but more depth. They think more before acting. They observe more before committing. Attraction becomes less about excitement and more about alignment. This is why self-directed confidence often filters out surface-level interest. Men who are drawn primarily to the feeling of being admired lose momentum. Men who are drawn to substance, character, and emotional steadiness lean in. The woman hasn't changed her standards. She has clarified them through behavior. Importantly, respect-based attraction does not require distance or detachment. It requires boundaries. Boundaries communicate self-trust. When a woman trusts herself, she does not need to convince anyone of her value. That absence of persuasion invites a different kind of attention. It signals that connection is optional, not compulsory. Men respond to optionality differently than to pursuit. Optionality activates discernment. It encourages men to show up intentionally rather than reflexively. For some, this is invigorating. For others, it is exhausting because it removes shortcuts to intimacy. Self-directed confidence also eliminates emotional bargaining. The woman is no longer trading energy for reassurance. She is no longer proving loyalty through self-sacrifice. This shifts attraction away from dependency and toward partnership. Men who are capable of partnership recognize this shift immediately, even if they cannot name it. What often confuses people is that respect-based attraction can feel less dramatic. There are fewer spikes, fewer emotional swings. But what replaces drama is durability. The attraction does not depend on constant stimulation. It rests on trust, presence, and mutual recognition. Men who stay attracted in this dynamic do so because they respect the woman's internal stability. They are not chasing her approval, they are engaging her reality. That engagement feels different. It feels calmer, more grounded, more intentional. For men who cannot adapt, the attraction fades because it was never rooted in respect to begin with. It was rooted in validation, and without it, there is nothing to sustain interest. Self-directed confidence does not make a woman harder to love. It makes love more honest. It removes illusion and reveals capacity. Attraction either matures into respect or dissolves into discomfort, and in that process, the dynamic shows exactly what it was built on.